Hello, this is old Mr. Kent. I am old Mr. Kent. and I'm 82 years old, riding around on an E-Trike made by electric e-bikes. And I noticed today I had 300 miles on it. Anyway, telling my life story. And I guess some people seem to enjoy it. And if you do and you want to start at the very beginning of all these videos I've been putting up, at the end of this video, you'll see a link where it says Life Story. Click on that. It'll take you to a playlist of all the videos I've made about my life. So, it's been kind of an exciting life, I think. Pardon me. So right now we're up to the time between 2005 and 2010. And in the last video, I talked about how my younger son and I, whose name is Bruce, went down to where my older son, Mark, lives and picked up a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. And then that was in trade for a airplane, a Cessna 170, that I could no longer afford because I was basically retired, and my son wanted to buy it, and so we made a trade plus some cash, and so my younger son and I went down. We picked up the Harley and brought it back, and then a couple weeks later, I flew the plane down. So I'm going to have two stories today. The first story is flying the plane down to deliver it to my son. And so I was in Spokane, Washington. I took off from a field up there and had to fly down through the Willamette Valley. And that was a couple hours, maybe a little more than a couple hours flight. And landed at Twin Oaks Airfield. And that's down near Hillsboro, Oregon. And so, I'm sorry. Anyway, so we got down there, or I flew down there, and as I was coming in, I radioed my intention to land, and he was listening on his aircraft radio, and so he didn't have a plane, so this was going to be his first plane. So he was listening when I radioed in. Well, then he started up, he took a video of me landing, as he called it, for the last time, the last flight. He called it the last flight I took on my plane. I'd had it for 15 years and put about 1,500, little over 1,500 hours on it. So I had my fun flying. So anyway, he got a video of me coming in and doing my last landing. And as I was coming in, I remember thinking about Toy Story, where Buzz Lightyear, who thought he could fly, jumped off the upstairs level, thinking he could fly across the flight of stairs and go out the window. And of course that didn't work. And as he landed, he said, "I shall go flying, or I shall go sailing no more." That was his words. And as I was coming in, I was thinking, yep, I shall go sailing no more. And that was the last time I flew my plane and the last time I landed it and all that. And then stayed all night, and then the next day I went up with his instructor because he wanted to make sure that he could still land a tail dragger. And if you've been following my videos, you know they're not easy to land. But he did fine. He did 2 or 3 landings, and he did fine. Always, when I would go get my biannual check rides, the instructor would always want to do some practice landings of him doing touch and goes, because there's just not that many tail draggers around. And so in order to stay current so he could legally fly in a tail dragger, well, then he needed to do 3 touch and goes. So anyway, the next day, the instructor did that. And then my son took me to the airport, and I flew home commercially. And that was the end of flying my Cessna 170. Had many, many good years of flying with that. So that's one story. Now, how about the motorcycle? Well, it was like I had a 1980 Harley Davidson motorcycle. It was a Road King. Okay, that was their best model back then. And so my older son, when he got a motorcycle, he found a used 1981 Road King. And so that's what he had. And of course, it had been wrecked, and then he repaired it, and it looked just kind of like the one that I had when he was a kid, and we went riding together and stuff like that. So that was what he had. So now my wife and I, we had the same kind of motorcycle we had years ago. So we went on a few little trips, and then we decided, I guess it was some kind of an anniversary. It seems like it was, but I don't know. But we wanted to go for like an overnight trip and stuff. And so packed up everything, and we wanted to go see Hell's Canyon. We'd heard about it, but never seen it. So we started out from Spokane, and we rode down to Lewiston, Idaho. I'm sorry, Lewiston, Idaho, where my wife's mom lived, and I think we stayed all night with her, and then visited, and then the next morning got up, and we headed south on Highway 95. If you know anything about Idaho, that goes north and south through Idaho. And we went down. My wife remembers going down the White Bird hill, which was pretty steep and pretty scary, but that was nothing to what was coming up. And so anyway, we got down, and we got to I don't remember the name of the town, and I'm not even going to bother to try to look it up. But we had a map, and so we saw if we turned off of 95, we could actually get down to Hell's Canyon. I don't know if there was a sign on the road or what, but anyway, so we took that route, and then, as I remember, it was late in the day, so we got a motel in the little town that was, right next to the Hell's Canyon, and so I got a motel, and then the next morning we got up and got dressed and had breakfast and decided, all right, let's ride down into the canyon. Now, we were expecting, I know I was expecting to see something more than just the canyon, but that's what we saw. We rode down, and now there's a dam called Oxbow Dam, and that was the area where we were. So I think we must have ridden across the Oxbow Dam to which crossed the Snake River at the bottom of the Hell's Canyon. And so we got to what I wanted to do. There was I'll see if I can put a map up. There's a town up above the canyon on the Oregon side, because that's the line the Snake River divides Idaho and Oregon. And so there was a town called Imnaha, and I decided, we'll go see what that's like. And so we rode down into the canyon, crossed the Oxbow Dam. I will say that's where we crossed. I'm pretty sure that's where it was. Anyway, and now we were on the Oregon side of the river, and we just started riding down in the direction that would get us to Imnaha, which would be, in that case, north on the map. So we're riding along on this dirt road, and it just went along, went maybe 3 or 4 miles, and then all of a sudden came to a dead end. And I could see why that was a dead end, because there was no way for a road to be built, because the canyon just came down on this side, came down on this side, and the water was right there. And so we got to the dead end, and we decided, well, this isn't going to work. So we turned around, started back where we had come from, along the dirt road. And we got a couple of miles down the dirt road, and I don't know, I guess it must have been hot, but we stopped for a can of soda. And we were sitting there drinking our soda, and an Idaho Power electric company, an Idaho Power truck came along and stopped, and the guy visited with us, and we visited for a minute or two, and he asked us what we're doing, and I said, well, we wanted to get to Imnaha up above, but hit a dead end. And he says, well, now there's an old logging road that you could probably take to get up this side of the canyon. And I said, can I take that road with this Harley? And he said, guys come over that all the time on motorcycles, so I think you can do just fine. Well, what he didn't understand was there's a huge difference between an 800-pound Harley Davidson motorcycle and a dirt bike. All kinds of differences. Maybe I'll put a picture of a dirt bike up, you can see. Anyway, so I didn't realize that he was ignorant about such things. And so he said, you go back, keep going the way you're going, and you'll see a little clearing and a little house, and then turn right, and you'll see the road going up the side of the canyon. And so that's what we did. Said goodbye, went down there, found that little house, found the little flat area, and we saw the road going up, and it looked pretty decent. And so we... This story is going to take longer than I expected, I think. We'll see. And so we started up that road, and it was dirt. And the canyon, of course, was straight up on our left side. And then there was a drop-off down to the river on our right side. And so we... yeah, I know, it's crazy, but we were enjoying ourselves because that was kind of, a challenge. Well, finally, the road started to get more narrow and more steep, or steeper, I guess you'd say. And so we kept going, and it got more and more steep, more and more narrow. And then we got to a point, now we're maybe 1,000 feet above the river or so. And that logging road had to have been more than 20 years old. It hadn't been used for a long time. I'm not even sure. There were still people with motorcycles coming over that. But anyway, so when rocks would tumble down from up above, they would stop. They'd hit that ledge and stop. And so as we were going along, there were boulders all over the ledge, and so we had to dodge around those. And of course, if you got a boulder in the middle, you don't go on the outside to fall over the edge. You go on the inside next to the wall. And so we were going up, and my wife said, I think she said, anyway, why don't we just turn around? Well, there's a couple reasons why we didn't turn around. Anyway, first place, if you've ever tried to turn a Harley Davidson motorcycle around, the handlebars don't turn very far, so you're going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the road, by that time, the road was so narrow and so treacherous that turning that bike around and going back and forth would have caused it to maybe even roll off the edge. That's how narrow it was. So I couldn't do that. And then secondly, if I was to get it turned around, it was so steep that I'd be using my handbrake, the front wheel, to keep us from going. And if that got to skidding, we'd just lose control and end up going over the edge. So our safest option was to keep going up and using the throttle to get up the hill. And it was, I don't know why they called it a logging road, because it was so steep. I don't know how a truck could maneuver that unless they were empty when they went up and full when they came down. And that still would have been dangerous. And so I often wondered if maybe there's a wrecked logging truck down at the bottom, and that's why they quit using it. But we were going around, and my wife had to push and help me and lift it as see, the clearance of that Harley was only 4 inches, was 4 inches off the ground. That's how they made it back then. So it would be nice and low. And so we high centered all the time, and we get stuck. And then I'd give it gas, and and I wasn't riding on it. I was standing on it, standing a straddle of it, and she would push, and we'd wiggle around and get around between boulders, and then where there was a washout across, we had to figure out how to get the bike across that, and we just I'll put some pictures up. Let's see, I'll just describe it now. When I got home, our motorcycle wasn't destroyed, but both passenger pegs were broken off, and so in both of the pictures that you see, both of them were broken off on both sides, and then the foot pads for the rider, they broke off, and so we threw them in the trunk, and that's how much trouble we were going through just to try to get up the hill. And so I mean, it was bad, and we actually climbed. I don't know, we weren't keeping track of time, and once we got up a little ways, my wife pointed out, she says, look over, we're going this way up the side, she says, look, you can't even see the river anymore. All you could see was the other side of the canyon, which was not very far away. And I've got a picture also. This is of Hell's Canyon. It's not our picture, but it kind of gave you an idea of what we were dealing with, because this is taken at a dam, but we was straight down the river. It was straight down on this side and straight up on this side, and that we didn't have a railing, and it was wider than that picture. So it shows, that picture shows a walking path, and this was supposedly a logging road. So anyway, so it took us at least an hour, if not more. We climbed up that hill. We climbed, I figured it out later, that probably about 4,000 feet in altitude, climbing up the side of that canyon. And then, pardon me, finally we got to a switchback, which turned us away from the edge and started coming. Actually, it was going 90 degrees to the other, and so we got to that switchback. Now, I'm not gonna be crude, but I'll tell you this: you've heard people say it scared the blank out of me. All right, so when we got to that switchback, I had to stop and take a break. It was stressful. I mean, I was frightened. My wife, I'm sure she was frightened, but when we hit that switchback, then all the pressure was off. Now, we still were on a bad road, and we were still dragging in the middle when we were going along, and our legs were hanging out because the foot pegs were broken. And we got up, and we got to a level spot, and we went for a little ways on the level spot, still on a bad road, bouncing up and down. And then we got to this place where these guys were cutting timber, or maybe they were cutting for firewood or something. But we got to this place, and so we stopped. And of course, one guy says, you're dragging in the middle. You're hitting high center. And we said, yeah, we know, but we're glad to be here. And we really were, because we're up into a wooded area that was level. And I asked them how we would get to that town of Imnaha, and they said, well, if you just keep going down this road and make a left, it'll take you to Joseph, Oregon. And we had been to Joseph, Oregon in the plains several times. That's a beautiful place. It's by Lake Walula, and tourist attraction place is what it is. And so they said you can go to Joseph. So with our legs dangling, we rode into Joseph, had something to eat, and I think we stayed all night in a motel. And then the next day we rode home. Glad to be alive, because it was it was not a good experience, although made good memories, made good stories. So anyway, almost running out of time here. This is longer than usual, but that's the story of ride through Hell's Canyon. There's nothing to look at except a canyon with a river at the bottom. So I wouldn't make a special trip like we did. Anyway, so that's the story of a long trip that we took on the Harley Davidson motorcycle. We took other trips too. And so I'll be continuing on with my story. We also eventually bought another brand new motorcycle. So we'll get there. But right now, I've taken too much of your time. I want to thank you for watching my video, and God bless.